Hello, doing a quick recording here of Call of Duty Warzone. We are playing on an Intel Xeon E5 1620 V2 paired with the GTX 1070 8GB video card. These are the visual settings we're going to be playing on here today, all at 1920 by 1080p. Everything is cranked out on high/ultra here. Just slowly scroll through here so you can have a look at the visual settings. So yeah, we're pretty much playing maxed out 1920 by 1080p. And later in the recording, obviously, if we survive, I will be lowering these settings down to what I like to normally play on. I'll call them like COD Pro settings or something. It's basically just where you turn everything else pretty much on low. You get a much higher frame rate through that. So yeah, that's what kind of we have on the go here for this video here. And yeah, as always, I do have MSI Afterburner running in the top left-hand corner of the screen, so you can keep an eye out on the CPU and GPU usage, as well as the frame rate and frame time graphs. I'm just going to be landing off here where no one else lands. Just I don't want to die immediately here. I'd like to run around a little bit so that you can get an idea of how the system will perform. Overall, 19 by 20, playing here at 1920 by 1080p, you can expect around I'd say on high settings about 75 to 100 FPS, so it's pretty solid there on all max settings. This is actually a very decent CPU and GPU pairing for kind of more playing games on those higher settings. It's not so ideal if you want to play games at like 200, 300 FPS. This is not the CPU for that. But if you want to play, yeah, like COD Warzone here on high settings 1080p, it will run really well with it. For those of you who are not too familiar, this CPU, the Xeon E5 1620 V2, is from the Ivy Bridge generation of processors, so that is very similar to like an i7-3770. So yeah, that's kind of the generation of what we're working with here. And yeah, I'm just gonna try my best not to die. Let's see if I can spot this guy. Don't see anybody here. I'm a little bit concerned. Looks like there are people around us. We're not in the most ideal situation here. Obviously, if I was good at this game, I'd be rushing these guys, but I am not. Sadly, I'm not that good here. And we are at 100% GPU usage, which is pretty crazy. Well, not crazy. It just shows like, okay, we've got a GTX 1070 max settings, and we're only running at like 70 FPS there, which is, yeah, pretty. I'd say it's pretty crazy. Like you'd expect it would be higher, but this Call of Duty here is very, very demanding. So yeah, on these very high settings, it does put quite a strain on the system. Just gonna run this weapon here because I do know this. It looks like he is moving around here. I don't see him. Obviously, I should go for the bounty. He's probably in that building there. But I'm not that kind of person. I'm not someone who can actually go and rush and kill and get my bounty. What I will do here in just a moment is lower the visual settings down. And yeah, then we'll test from there. But you can see like the quality is phenomenal on all high settings here, 1920 by 1080p. And yeah, let me just crank these settings down a little bit. I will be leaving high texture resolution with the 8GB of VRAM. I think that's, yeah, it's perfectly acceptable to run that. Let me see, I will cache those. Just looking at the different settings here of what to lower. I'm not an expert on these settings here, so I do have to read and take my time. I can't just go clickety click click and be done with it. Alright, you can see now we are actually a little bit CPU bottlenecked. We are at about 65, 67% GPU usage. So it looks like the CPU with the game and everything, how it's running, it can only handle about this much frame rate here, as we are currently running on. See where this guy's at. That doesn't matter, honestly. Don't need to fight him there. Yeah, you can see the CPU playing a AAA title like this. You're going to be more around that 60, maybe 75 FPS mark, but it's not going to go much higher there, especially here on Warzone based off of what we've tested. So the bounty is going to expire, no big deal there. But that's a 6K bounty there, so that's pretty decent amount of cash. Well, there's our first kill on the system. Pretty easy, nice and smooth there. No problems whatsoever, so that's pretty neat. What weapon is this here? Oh no, I'm not running this. I'd much rather have the sniper. See if you had anything else to grab. Doesn't seem like it. We're all oh, shoot. Oh my god. I hate this. Like, You can't fight 3 players at once, clearly. Holy smokes. Our CPU usage is pretty high at the moment. Let me just tab out, see what we're running. Yeah. Yeah, CPU usage is definitely being stressed very hard here when we were out in the match there. We were getting close to that. I'd say about 90-80% CPU usage. I think there was about 10% in background tasks, but this is a good test to do. And yeah, I'm pretty excited testing out this 1070, of course, just because when you do play on those high visual settings and you're going to be mainly stressing the GPU, you don't necessarily need as good of a processor. Mind you, this is a pretty solid processor. You can play your AAA title games 60 FPS to 70 FPS. But yeah, that's why when we crank up our visual settings, we're able to make full use of our GPU, and as well, we're not going to be bottlenecking our, yeah, we're not bottlenecking our CPU there. So it's pretty decent. Let's see. I know, that sounded like gibberish what I just talked about there, but we're just testing, we're just seeing how this will perform. I'm going to run through the gulag here. Alright, it looks like he's running that way. That guy is an absolute ninja. But anyways, that is going to conclude our recording there of Call of Duty Warzone. We were just testing out the GTX 1070 paired with the Intel Xeon E5 1620 V2, all at 1920 by 1080p. So we saw the system handled really well in between. I'd say around 75 FPS average with this processor. Not ideal necessarily. You can't really push out like 120 FPS because I did test an 8-core CPU earlier today. I do have another recording that is the Intel Xeon E5 2650 V2, and that allowed us to play on these 1080p low settings. We were able to get like 100, 120, 130 FPS. And yeah, again, these are the settings that we were playing on here. They're more low and we turned them down. And yeah, of course, if you guys have any questions regarding this system or this kind of setup and what you can expect yourself, you can definitely reach out. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions there. And yeah, hopefully this gave you a little bit of insight on how the GTX 1070 performs when paired to basically a 3rd generation i7. Thanks.